started out in student services, and then I transitioned over to the academic side of the house, teaching psychology, and coordinated the student success course for the past 8 years or so, and also took on the role of our director of our faculty development center, which is called Self-Care Middlesex. So I am just absolutely thrilled to be able to bring those experiences to the table in this new position and work with all of you. And I have just been in awe already of all the amazing work that I have witnessed, and I'm really excited to be a part of your journey and support you in any way that I can. So I want to start off by asking, let's see, Mark McCormick is here actually, so I'm going to ask Mark to just give a welcome from Middlesex, and then if you can turn it over to Larry afterwards, that would be great. Thanks so much.
Good morning. So I think I know about half of you. I've worked now at 3 of the colleges here. We're all wonderful colleges. Middlesex Forest County is the best, as you know. But I got to give a shout out to Mercer. Where's Mercer? And to Salem. Where's tiny Salem? A number of years that have very fond memories of both those places. So we all do great work. And I want to say, what's nice about today, besides the fact that they're here, is that we have on this campus 3 different groups, statewide groups meeting. I'm going from one to the other saying hello and greetings. And one of them is the New Jersey Collegiate Business Administration Association. Say that fast. The NJCPAA is a statewide group that involves the 2-year, 4-year public-private colleges that offer business degrees, and they honor faculty, staff, and students in the areas of business. And they're giving awards out based on innovation articles on business that the faculty and students wrote together. I'm also going to say hello to the NJANSA, the JANSA, which is the Jersey Association of New Student Advisors, for the first year kind of stuff. And while you're shaking your head, Tanya, a group of public parties are involved in them that help students get ready for college, get into college. So all these things in my mind fit what you're doing here. It's all about, everyone's know today, it's 2 words, guided pathways, right? No matter what sector you're in, 2 or 4, public or private, no matter what school you work at, we're all about getting students in, keeping them on the path, and getting them to complete. And if we can do that, we're doing our student a service. I think right now, we all know we're not doing as well as we could. Our rates on retention aren't where they want them to be sometimes until graduation. So I applaud what you're doing here. We've got a great leader in terms of Christine. We can't ask for better than that. So welcome to Middlesex. Have a great day. I pass it over to Billy Massey.
And I know you, Mark, and the team from Middlesex will join me in thanking President Joanne Morales here at Middlesex County College. I'm thinking Joanne must have celebrated about a 10-year anniversary as president. 11? So she's figured it out and done great work here at Middlesex. Not only leading Middlesex, but being a great leader on our statewide table. We rely on our presidents in the way you would expect on our trustees to provide this statewide vision and collaborating that we do. And looking around the room, Don Borden, just stand her way, lead president, not so really more Don, but doing enough that we can still use that word. We can be County College, so glad you took time to be here today. It's probably about 30 other places you could be today. And some areas, and I think that's the only other president in the room. Just a couple of quick thank yous so that we can get out of your way. You all must have had a couple of cups of coffee this morning, because usually these statewide events around 10 o'clock, people are still striking in. I think some of you have been here an hour already, huh? So thank you for your energy and enthusiasm. Our communities need the rain, right? So we gotta, accept that. But some of you we should have waited until you all got here, but we can't control those things. I want to especially, again, build on something Mark said, and that is Dr. Christine Harrington. When we stepped out in this national way to become part of this national effort, the Kresge-funded Centers for Student Success, the presidents and I quickly hatched an idea that it would be a great way to provide leadership opportunities to campus leaders. And so 2 years ago, President Ray Murphy Brookdale knocked on the door of Dr. Jacinia Madison, and I know Jacinia is here. Raise your hand, Jacinia. And we thank Brookdale for that. And boy, we had a couple of great years in student success efforts. And Joanne LaPearl Morales and Mark as well, when we put out the notice that we were, as Jacinia was returning to Brookdale, we were looking for new leadership. Oh my gosh, as Christine hit the ground on, I I get emails at 6 a.m. and then emails at midnight. So she's also running for re-election to her local school board. So she must be a triplet or something. I don't yet know, because she's just remarkable the vision she's bringing to this. It's really great work that you all and Jasenia have done in the prior couple of years. I want to mention jobs for the future, and I won't steal Christine's thunder. I'll let her have the privilege of introducing great friends and colleagues of ours. But, you know, we thought from the beginning, when we jumped into this national conversation, that one of the real ways that value could be added was that we would connect the work here in New Jersey to the other states. I think it's now 12, I guess, 12 or 13 in county that have these centers for student success. And I'm struggling not to steal Christine's thunder. One of the people you're going to meet led one of these centers in another state. And so we've had the privilege of taking many of you to these national meetings, and the synergy and the energy that you would expect to occur, the collaboration across states, it's really even exceeded my lofty expectations of how that would be helpful. So most importantly, I want to thank all of you. You know how busy you are to do what you get paid to do, if you will, at your campuses locally. I say this lots of times, I never will stop saying, never been a more exciting, important time to be community college leaders. Can I get an amen? You guys are the best. I've been doing this a while. We've never had a stronger community college leadership team. We created a doctorate program, a little shameless advertisement here. Raise your hands if you are in that doctorate program that we created with our presidents or a graduate of it. Look at that. These are freshly minted doctorates in the community college administration program. On this for us, will give me 10 seconds more. Uniquely powerful program in partnership with Bowen University. But we host the face-to-face Saturdays. We move it around. This cohort-based program. It's here at Middlesex at this time. And punchline, drum roll, half of the courses are taught by our community college presidents and others. And students teaches, of course. So presidents, senior VPs, I have the privilege of teaching and serving on dissertation committees. Community colleges in New Jersey, and the leadership that you represent are all New Jersey proud. So I do want to get out of your work, get out of your way, so you can get into the important work here today and unguided pathways. But I do want to just pause with you in a reflective way and self-reflection as well for all of us on the progress that has been made. Some of you may have been at last week's event. It was last week. We spent the time with DevEd gathering. AACC, our national leadership, when they kicked off, if you will, the student success work, the suburban committees and white papers, they said from the beginning that two of the foundational pillars of student success work are one, not just reform, we got to transform developmental debt, and two, college readiness work with partnering with high schools. So, quick report card. If you haven't seen maybe yesterday's email from Christine following up on last week's DevEd Summit, some powerful pictorials there showing here's where we were 3 years ago in terms of New Jersey's community colleges that do summer bridge programs, and here's where we are now. Here's where we were 3 years ago on boot camps 3 years ago. Here's where we are now. Here's where we were 3 years ago on accelerated learning programs. Here's where we are now. All the trends are off the charts. You know, you get impatient sometimes, of course, with the slower pace of change than we prefer, but the trends are all in the right direction. Now, along comes Christine Harrington with the JFF team and making the point, we have to frame DevEd reform within guided pathways. Guided pathways, if you haven't read the book, the Bailey book, other authors too, Dave Jenkins, John Jaggers, all of this is being framed by guided pathways. College readiness now, I'm so pleased and proud to tell you, that this Center for Student Success has raised about $5 million in the last 2 or 3 years. You know, we always can use more. Much of that money, almost all of the money, has been sent back to the colleges to do college readiness now work. Students who need help to catch up, helping them to catch up through transition courses. And now, more recently, some of you may be participating in the response that Christine put out on the dual enrollment side, college credit now. So we've got federal money that we've secured for those initiatives. We've got foundation money, Cresty. We don't folks know yet, Christine, just another $200,000 for Potential Foundation a couple of days ago. And we did get an incredibly tough state budget plan, $1 million in the current budget. Maybe on one hand, this is the number of new initiatives funded in the current state budget, and we're proud that college readiness is one of those. And so the DevEd reform, college readiness work, guided pathways, Smiling Christine, part of the Superwoman Christine Harrington, now on the scene, moving this ball forward in ways that the city of Mathis helped us to get to. It's all good, folks, and end of story. It is making a difference. It is making a difference. One statistic we're proud of, since we started this work, listen to this, the number of New Jersey Community College graduates, certificates, and associate degrees is up 47%, I think, in that time frame. Now, that matters a lot, and that's against the backdrop of declining enrollments. We need to drill down further. The researchers in this doctoral program are going to raise their hands and remind me, we're going to look at graduation rates too. I could get it over my head here if I try to describe this in much more detail than tracking cohorts, longitudinal edge of colleges. So we're going to do that, and we're planting some ground presence as they are. But in the meantime, we can't say accurately and proudly 47%, that's the number of graduates in our state increase since we started this work. So thank you again so much for being here. Onward and upward.
Thanks so much, Larry. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time, and you are all part of the journey, which is a very important work that we're doing. So Larry mentioned that last week, if you were at the DevEd Summit, I had collected some data from you and I packaged that up. Well, I am a teacher at heart, as you know, so I know that people like to do class assignments versus homework assignments. So I actually have another one of those for you that we're going to start with today. If you open up your folders on the right-hand side, the very first document you should see is something called the New Jersey Story. What I'm asking you to do is to spend about 5 minutes or so. Hopefully it will take much more than that, but we'll certainly let you finish that document. Work with other colleagues from your campus. I only need one per college. And when you're finished with completing it, you can hand it in. Amy and I will be able to come and pick it up. Amy Mondrag is on my team. I forgot to mention her and introduce her, so please stand up for a moment. Amy Mondrag. Teresa Capra is also on my team. She's not able to be here today. And Don Rogowski, who is not able to be here today, but Amy will be assisting. So I'm going to give you about 5 to 7 minutes or so to work at your tables and do that, and then we'll reconvene, and I will move on to the presentation in just a moment. Those from each institution to, you can just leave it right at the front desk. That would be fabulous. It's really helpful for the center. One of the requests that we get from the center is to be able to provide you with some data about where are we at compared to other New Jersey colleges. So this is the kind of information that is helpful for me to identify kind of who's doing what and who I can tap into for which resources and which activities. So
leader of our Guided Pathways team, and we are 22 members strong. We have campus-wide representation, we have faculty, we have department chairs, administrators, counselors, representation from career services, we have 2 student members, we have institutional research, so we're a very broad and big committee, but we have lots of great discussions. It might be challenging at times to schedule meetings, but we're managing and we're doing a lot of great work in terms of brainstorming as to how to move Guided Pathways forward here at Middlesex. So last year we did a lot of talking about what services and resources we already have in place that we can leverage for Guided Pathways, how we can build on our advising that we provide students. We will be introducing Student Planner in the next year or so how can we use that to help us with Guided Pathways, our counseling services, career services, our freshman seminar class, our student success class, all of the work we've done in all of our accelerated learning program, ALP courses in math and English, and our summer bridge program. So we have a lot of resources that we can leverage for Guided Pathways. This year, we had our first initial meeting, and we decided that we wanted to have developed and completed with a very ambitious goal of by February, degree completion maps. And this is going to be a collaborative effort with the cooperation and help of our deans, academic deans, and our departments and our faculty, that we will have degree completion maps for all of our programs so that we have consistency when students are looking at our programs to ensure that the consistency surrounds the way that our programs are presented, that they're presented or organized by semester, and that within each semester we're going to prioritize the courses that need to be taken. If you're going to be a part-time student and you can only take 3 courses, these are the 3 courses you can take, as opposed to taking, say, the 5 courses if you're a full-time student. And then we're going to have, in these degree completion plans, identify gateway courses, those courses that students really need to complete in order to move forward in the major. So if you are, an accounting major and you can't get through principles of accounting, there needs to be a conversation there with a counselor as to, what's going on and how can we help you to be successful in those types of courses. Our best bets is what we're titling it right now, our best bets courses, which would be those courses that everybody needs regardless of major. So for undecided students, courses like English composition, math, we know that having a math course early in the academic career of a student is beneficial to them. Transfer, courses that there needs to be conversations about which course is critical for transfer depending upon a student's major. Courses that are specific to a student's career. And finally, milestone courses where we want to celebrate student success or have that conversation when a student is struggling with a particular course and talk about maybe alternatives or resources available to help them be successful. So our goal is to have these degree completion maps created within the academic departments and certainly with faculty input. That is critical to this entire process, that these come from faculty because they are the content experts, and to have these degree completion maps in place by February and then have them available through our online catalog for students to refer to as they move forward in their programs here at Middlesex. So that's where we are this year. Thank you.
Right, amazing stuff happening. Excellent. So we're going to have one more example. Sabrina from Hudson County Community College is going to come and share their journey with you.
Good morning, everyone. About a year and a half ago, we gathered a committee of 8 members of the college campus, and we utilized the concept paper that was written by a member who's probably in this room right now, the New Jersey Council of Community Colleges, as our framework to develop a student success plan. We had 8 weeks where we had a standing meeting time. The group came together, and they were working meetings, because we all have that experience where we're spending a lot of times in meetings, you leave the meetings with more work to do and less time to do it in. So we made sure that these are working meetings, we reserved the computer lab, and we pretty much used that concept paper. They outlined the different areas, and we said, let's focus. This week, we're focusing on new student orientation. Let's review. We did a SWOT analysis as far as what we're doing in those areas, and then we split up amongst which institutions we know are making great strides in those areas, and we researched what they're doing, the best practices. We came up with lots of ideas, we had the Post-it notes all over, and based on that, we were able to create this document, which is the Student Success Plan, that was actually integrated into the college's strategic plan. So part of those goals under there around advising, for example, that are directly related with the guided pathways was being able to utilize the student planning module. I know many of our members got together sometime last year to talk about that and some of the challenges and some of the success with utilizing that. So we utilized the student planning module and made sure that currently in our course catalog, our college catalog, we have a course sequence for the college level classes. But we all know many of our students come in developmental classes, so when we look at that, it looks like it's a 2-year program, it's a little deceiving. So we want to be able to move them through that. If you start at level 0, level 2, this is what it looks like. So we utilize that student planning module to be able to have in the first year course, the student success course, be able to have the counselors have that as an assignment, a required assignment for all the new students, to be able to start mapping out their courses. What does it look like? And then they can work on that. So the one semester we piloted doing smaller group meetings outside of the CSS class, which is our college student success class, to see what kind of feedback we got from the students on working in smaller groups. Then we started with one-on-one, because we all know research says that cohort model really works. So that's one of the areas we're looking towards with that, so we can really develop that piece even more. My background was working with EOF, and one of the assessments that we used was the Noah Levitt assessment. So we're trying to get the funds for that, because I think that would be really powerful in advising as well. For those of you who are not familiar with Noah Levitt, they have the CSI, which is the College Student Inventory, and that's the assessment that students take. And it pretty much gives you a snapshot of the non-cognitive factors that we all know are directly related with retention of students. You know, it's not about their academic capabilities all the time. Sometimes they have the drive, they utilize the resources, they can figure that part out. We lose our students because of the other things, lack of support from family, financial resources. So that's one of the things we're trying to do along with the guided pathways, to be able to move the students along and have that cohort model. Another thing we've been doing is working closely with our new Office of College Relations, School and College Relations, to be able to build that pathway from high school students. So we have a program where high school students are on campus taking classes, and this is the first year that we integrated their orientation with our orientation. So that way students can get the general orientation and see all the college students and what it looks like once you pass through the high school program, and also be able to get the specifics with that high school program. Another thing that we have been working with, again, going back to the cohort model, is trying to revamp our faculty advising program, so that way we can have our advisors in advising and counseling be able to work specifically with the first year students and then move them on to the faculty advisors. That's everything. So we have a lot of work to do. We're definitely have a group here working closely. We have a book group with the guided pathways, kind of sharing ideas. So we're excited about what's to come. Thank you.
Very helpful. It seems like there's a lot of progress being made. I know we're all at very different points, but hopefully a program such as today will help us all move forward from wherever we are, farther towards the goal of really helping students complete. And really, I think that's really the primary reason that we're all here together today. So at this point, we're gonna get to the meat of the program, where we're gonna get to invite the JFF folks up. And I want to tell you a little bit about JFF. So as I walked into this new position, obviously we're very thankful to Kresge Foundation for supporting the center, not just our center, but other centers also across the United States. But in addition to supporting the center, they also provide funding to JFF to provide support to us. So I kind of view them as my center, so I'm supporting how incredibly valuable that is, because obviously, as you can imagine, this is a giant position with so many different layers. And I can tell you that I went to this national policy meeting in July. My head is spinning. I'm meeting all these wonderful players from across all the different centers, you know, national folks like the JFF folks I'm going to introduce in a moment. Everyone was so incredibly helpful. And then I got back and they said, we're going to set up an orientation for you. And it was like a one-on-one orientation for me, meeting my needs. And now, you know, my husband doesn't know it, but I'm having Chris and Andrew move in with me. So I'm going to bring him home with me. I'm not letting him go. I said, this is really great. I can't let you leave. So I don't really want to spend much more time introducing them because I want them to give you their spiel. But Chris Baldwin and Andrea Hunkos from JFF are incredible people. They are just amazing. They have such expertise really in this space. And I want to, you know, turn it over to them so they can tell you a little bit more about themselves and give you the backdrop. We will be having some interactive components to this morning, and we probably will not be having lunch right at 12 o'clock. I'm just warning you ahead of time. I promise you'll get an hour for lunch, but it's probably not going to be at 12 o'clock on the dot, just because the morning's probably a little heavier than the afternoon with some of the content. So anyway, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Chris and Andrea.
Thanks, Christine. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Hunkos. Really happy to be here today. I used to live not too far from here for 12 years, so happy to be back in this area from Boston. Amy is going to help me get set up because I'm not very tech savvy. But in the meantime, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Jobs for the Future. We are a national nonprofit focused on promoting educational and economic opportunity for all. And we have an explicit focus on those who are least prepared and underserved in our post-secondary systems and in our workforce systems. Thank you. The team that Chris and I are on is called the Post-Secondary State Policy Team, and we are focused on the community college sector and really providing service and support to a network of states that we work with, as Barry mentioned, and Chris is going to talk a little bit more about that network. I want to first run through what we're going to be talking about today. First, we'll give you a little more context and background on the Student Success Center network, as well as on Guided Pathways, a high-level overview from the national perspective. Then I'm going to talk about an overview of med majors, what they are, why they're important, and give an example from one college in Ohio of how they've gone through the process of designing and implementing med majors. Through our work with that college, we've been able to document what are the different decision points along the way, and we're going to be talking through that process, and there's a tool at your table that you can look at while we're talking about that. Then we're going to have time for you guys to work together and have conversations at your table. Amy and Christine will lead us through an exercise where you get to grapple with some of the questions about what would this look like at your institution. And then we will wrap up and have a brief discussion after that. So with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague Chris Baldwin, who's going to give us some more context and background on the Student Success Center network that we work with, as well as the Guided Pathways.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to, we're switching up a little bit what we originally planned, so I'm going to switch over to a different slide. So I want to ask a question, and I think I know this answer because you guys have been at this for a while. How many of you have read the Bailey book? Okay. I'm sorry, the Bailey, Davis, and Sean Jagger are good at that. It's not just Mom, it's Mom, Davis, Mom, and Sean. So you all have read the book. How many of you have been to a previous meeting of the Student Success Center around Guided Pathways? How many of you, and there's no judgment here, are new to hearing about Guided Pathways? Okay, you have a few. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to talk for a minute about the Student Success Centers and hit a high-level overview of Guided Pathways. And those of you that are newer to it, if we want to, at a separate point, tend to spend a little bit more time talking to you. The vast majority of folks in the room are pretty well versed in it. So what you're seeing on this what you see here is the set of 15 student success centers nationally. And as Andrea has said, we work with this network of centers, which our work has primarily been funded by the Kresge Foundation, but very soon we're hopeful there'll be a substantial investment in the network from the Gates Foundation as well. And so there's more on that later. But these student success centers, I'm not going to talk about how they all came into being, other than to say they all came to this conversation in similar ways than that New Jersey did. And that is really trying to make sense of a lot of things that are going on around student success. Lots of great conversations, but the buzzword that's often used is coherence or the lack thereof. And the Student Success Center's job is really to think about how can they bring a focus and clear attention to the many good things that you are doing to improve student outcomes. And that's their role. There's 13 centers. They're scattered throughout the country. There's likely to be more in the coming years. But let me just give you a sense of the magnitude of the reach of these 13.
She has to be the one.
Nearly half of the colleges in the country are represented in the centers in these states. 50%, 56% of the fall enrollments. Importantly, for the mission that Andrea just described about JFF, 67% of minority students in the country are in the colleges in the 13 states. So it's,
I'm following him.
we were very pleased
Grab
when we
this.
started putting these data together to see
Keeps him moving.
53% of the Pell Grant recipient, which is an interesting, you'd expect at some level those
Computer, he has
numbers
to
would be
take over
closer,
later.
but I think that tells us something about uptake of Pell. And then 54% of all the associate's degrees were awarded at the institutions in these states. I don't show you these data because I'm up here to pat ourselves on the back about this being some kind of accomplishment. It simply is a reflection of the potential reach of the centers and the colleges that are in the states where they work. And for that reason, the foundations have found your work through the centers really a very important vehicle for getting you all the support you need to make important changes. The last thing I'll say about the Student Success Centers is that they are, almost all of them, in fact all of them, are moving in the direction of creating, that's a different view of the United States that I haven't seen. So if you stand like this, yeah.
Not just there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what I want to highlight is, and there is a lot of movement around guided pathways, and all of the student success centers, they're in different places with their conversation about guided pathways, but they are all moving towards a guided pathways framework or agenda in their states. And not surprisingly, we are seeing a lot of institutions across the country because of entities like the centers, but also of their own accord, that are working on guided pathways. I'll just keep going. The thing that I will say about the guided pathways work is that it really has emerged organically. I think national organizations and foundations have funded the work, but it really has emerged over the last decade or more of reform that's gone on that has been happening in institutions all over the country. But the model of student success, or the model of guided pathways is actually quite simple. You've heard this before. There's four pillars to it. The first is, and now I got a graphic on the screen this is from the AACC pathways, the national pathways. Thank you for fixing it. This is the pathways model, and a graphic that they recently produced. And I'm talking right now about the green aspect of the screen. And I'm not going to go into the details of the bullets, and we'll share these slides with you so you can have them. But I want to hit the high points. There's four pillars to guided pathways, for those of you that are new to it. You need to clarify the program paths and get into, so that students know what their options are. You need to help them get on those paths by rethinking your revising. You need to think about how you help those students stay on those paths once they're engaged. And then lastly, and certainly not least, we need to ensure that students are learning along the way. And so the guided pathways movement that has taken off nationally, that's emblematic of what's happening with the AACC Pathways Project, really is following these four areas. And I know most of you that have been working on this have been talking about aspects of this. Today, we're really going to focus on clarifying the paths, and then we're going to spend time this afternoon talking primarily about getting students on the path, but we'll also talk a bit about helping students stay on the path. But the reason we're switching around our idea a little bit is, one, you're further along than I actually realized coming into the room in terms see and hear are two important things. One, there's not one way to do this. If you're looking for that magical path that's crystal clear and all of you can apply, it doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because the program maps are the basis of this work, and those have to be contextually designed based on your own programming. Some of you may have more CTE programming than others. Some of you may have more transfer-oriented programming than others. That's perfectly legit, and none of this is suggesting you change that. But you do have to design paths that make sense for your institution. So that's why there's no one way to do this. Andrea's going to talk about RAIN and how they came to their meta majors and how that connected to their programs of study. They approached it in a particular way in terms of sequencing the conversation. There's other examples where institutions came at it differently, and that is also okay. So if you don't take anything else from what I'm saying right now, is that first thing is there's no one way to do this. And as much as we all are looking for that, just that model that we can just package and deliver, it's just not the way this work will happen, because it's very deep work and it's intense work. The other thing is that you're not alone. I'm going to go back to this. Oh, thanks. So that still makes the point. At the New South, that used to be the East Coast, there's a lot of work going on around guided pathways. And now the North Pole, that is Seattle, Washington. These blue dots represent all the institutions in the country that are engaged in guided pathways. There's a few sprinkles you can see in the New South, and the Old South, actually. You can see the orange ones. Those are universities that are working on this. This is a community college phenomenon, but it's also, there's strong principles and lessons that we can all learn from the universities as well. So that gives you a sense of the magnitude. But I want to spend just a couple more minutes before I turn it back over to Andrea to talk about what are we seeing in terms of the progress of the AACC Pathways colleges. JFF is partners with AACC, CCRC, the Data Center, ATB. I'm sure I'm leaving partners out there with that. Aspen, I'm not going to try. They're all listed. If you can read that very small print at the bottom of the page. We are partners in this, and we are very involved in the conversations in the institutes. There's 30 colleges nationally that started this work earlier this year, and it's at about a 2-year process. So I want to show you a few slides. Those of you all, most of you will be aware that we did an assessment earlier in the spring, and we've had some discussions about how useful that was and how we can be more useful and if it was burdensome, etc. But I'm going to show you a reason why that assessment may be a powerful thing for you individually and collectively. So the 30 Pathways colleges have all done essentially the same assessment that you all did in the spring. And they did it in February when I started. So I'm going to just quickly show you 4 slides. This is the progress on mapping pathways to student end goals, on the first bucket that I mentioned, clarifying paths. On the left, you can see where they were, where the 30 colleges were in February, and then they redid it in September. And when I got to Davis to give me the more current slides, because they hadn't got all the colleges in when they put these together for a meeting. So what you can see is there's some folks that have gone a long way on some of the metrics and some of the practices and principles, but there's a lot of work to be done. And this is, to the extent that there is a linear progress to the pathways conversation, you have to start with the program maps. You certainly can talk about redesigning your advising, but you can't put the final touches on your advising redesign before you know what you're advising about. So the program maps is really a first step in this conversation. And you can see from this slide the progress of the colleges in the national initiative. Similarly, this is helping students enter the path. So this is them starting to step into redesign. And I will say that we have seen progress here, but I think what's new and different about this is that the colleges, a number of these colleges, I think 25 of the 30, maybe 24 of the 30 are achieving the dream colleges. And one of the lessons that we learned from achieving the dream over the last decade is There was a lot of good work, but it was done in isolation, and it wasn't connected to other things, and often, too often, it was applied to a half dozen students instead of scaled to all of them. So I think what we're seeing in this slide, and the fact that these institutions have been able to move pretty quickly on some of these pieces, not all of them, there's still lots of work to be done in a lot of these colleges, but we've seen them move because of a history of reform of a decade or more for some of them that have been working on this. So my point here is that progress can be made. It's not going to happen overnight. You see, there's places where some institutions haven't made any progress at all. And while we obviously all want to see progress, that's not surprising, and that's okay. This is not, there's no quick shortcut to get this done. Because it's serious work, and it takes time. And it takes a lot of conversations and cultural shifts that we'll spend more time probably talking about this afternoon. This, similarly, we've seen movement on keeping students on the path. And as I'll talk this afternoon, it's easy, and when we start talking about early alerts and monitoring systems, to think we can buy some technology off the shelf and it's going to just solve a problem for us. And as Gretchen Schmidt, who runs this national initiative, says, and it's really funny, is when you buy technology at a college, keep your receipt. If you know Gretchen, tell her I attributed that to her. It's funny. The point is that the technology by itself is not going to solve this problem for you. You got to revisit business processes and structural processes to make it actually work for you the way it needs to. But often when we talk about this, keeping folks on the path, people tend to default to a technology solution by itself, and that's just not the way. So we'll come back to that. The last thing, and it's interesting, I've been in several of the national meetings and sort of prep with the partners, and there's coaches that are involved with the 30 colleges. And this one looks like this is where we've seen the most movement. I would challenge this on a certain level because I think what you're seeing in a lot of those orange bars that we see things at scale, even though it says it's about program outcomes, I think we've done a pretty good job of mapping course outcomes. And one of the deep challenging issues around pathways is getting well-intended faculty to think beyond the individual courses they're teaching, which is their natural unit of analysis, and put it in the context of the program outcomes. I think what you see here is a reflection that many colleges are using what they do for accreditation to talk about learning outcomes. But I would challenge us all to think a little deeper about whether or not we really mapped out the learning outcomes for the programs that we bring design. So I can't speak to each of the colleges, so I don't know exactly, but I think in some respects we've seen a lot of movement here. Well, not actually a lot of movement. If you look at February, the folks in the first one there were 14 colleges that said they'd had it at scale. One more had it at scale several months later. And I think the difference is that somebody probably understood that everybody else was using what they say about accreditation. I'm not saying that's not important and legitimate. I think I question whether or not it's deep enough in terms of the discussion of learning outcomes. So I want to stop there and turn it back over to my colleague to talk about, meta majors and program maps. But we welcome a conversation about this, and we'll certainly come back to these slides later in the day as well.
Thanks, Chris. And as Chris talked about, one of the key elements of the Guided Pathways movement is around creating structure that provides students with clear guidance to pathways. And I'm going to talk about meta majors, which are really a response to that. This is thanks. I can see the slides, but then we have So yeah, as I was saying, meta majors are an important component of the Guided Pathways design. They align very well with all the elements that Chris was just talking about. And first, before I go through this, I want to point out that some of the slides that I'll be walking through today were developed by a colleague of ours at Jobs for the Future named Lexi Wah. And she recently authored a paper about meta majors that highlights two colleges' experiences going through this process and also outlines the different decision points that we're going to talk about. So later in this presentation, presentation, there's a link to that, and I encourage all of you to look at that. I also have some slides on loan from Lorraine County Community College, who has generously shared that with us today. So, let's see. Okay, I wanted to start with, let me put this up here for a second. What are meta majors? I'm sure that you have heard about meta majors with different terms called career clusters or communities of interest or exploratory majors. So I wanted to talk about it. Simply put, meta majors are broad collections of majors that are grouped together around common course content. And they allow students to explore a broad area of interest. So they're starting with the student's interest in mind from the entry point into the institution. And they create sets of courses that meet academic requirements across a broad discipline range, such as health sciences or STEM or education or business. And they're really designed with the end in mind. They really facilitate early decision making for students by providing that structure and helping to narrow down the many, often dizzying array of choices that students are faced with coming in. I know when I was in college, there were probably about 20 or 30 majors to choose from, and many of our students are looking at over 100, and that can be really overwhelming and confusing for students. And I do want to point out here that meta majors are specifically designed for undecided students, that they're a way for undecided students to explore something that they're gravitating towards. And one of the components of meta majors is program maps of default course sequences, which we'll talk about in a moment. On the screen is an example of one college's, a subset of one college's meta majors. This is from Valencia College in Florida. The state of Florida actually has all of their colleges have the same 8 meta majors. That was something that the state decided a couple of years ago. So they have established these meta majors, and then as you can see across the top there, business, health sciences, and STEM. Those are those broad bucket categories, and then underneath each of those, there's a set of programs, certificate, and
One of them had to be a wide shot.
offerings.
I said one of them had to be a wide shot. So I still got
The
that.
concept.
So no need.
I also want to talk about why meta majors are important.
No, if
This
they want to
design is really in response to research findings that many of us are very familiar with. We know that the completion rates at community colleges are unacceptably low. The latest statistic that I saw was 20% of students entering two-year colleges intending to get a degree complete that degree in 3 years. We also know from research on how people make decisions, decision-making science, and behavioral economics, that when students are faced with too many choices, that can result in anxiety and confusion, and that can lead to completely avoiding the decision altogether, or making a decision that later they feel it wasn't a very informed decision. And we know that that can lead to loss of time and money spent at the institution, and worse so to lead to dropout and stop out. So the research that largely is behind this movement is all from institutions like the Community College Research Center. And they've been able to show evidence suggesting that the lack of structure and too many options inhibit student progress and completion. We also have evidence that suggests that students who enter a program of study within the first year are more likely to earn a credential, as well as the correlation between credit accumulation in the first year and student success. So that's a key determinant for student success. And the paper that I mentioned earlier by my colleague, Lexi Waugh, has a lot more information if you're interested in that. So now I want to walk through some of the key components of meta majors and just get a little bit more into detail. As I mentioned, meta majors help students narrow down their program interests early. They also help ensure that students are registering for the courses relevant to what program they want to be in. Meta majors are also designed to map and be aligned to the general education core so that students can start with the core as well as some content-related courses and then branch off into the direction that they're interested in. This is especially because if you have differentiated math pathways at your institution, it's very important, obviously, for students to start in the right math. So some people who we worked with on meta majors say very explicitly the reason that they're doing meta majors is around math. Meta majors also help provide information systematically so that students are seeing along the pathway different milestones, such as when they, you can align your meta majors to an accumulation of a certain number of credits. I think Terry was talking about earlier also how meta majors help to create a cohort of students. They can also create that cohort dealing with the faculty, where students are working earlier on in their careers with students who have similar interests, as well as faculty and advisors and others who are specifically geared towards that area. They can have that community feeling learning together. So this is a little hard to read, but on your tables there's a embellished document that lists a series of questions along what we have documented working with Lorraine County Community College and Miami-Dade College, what the key decision points along the way in designing and implementing meta majors are. So I do want to point out, just as Chris mentioned, that there's no right way to do this and there's no right sequence. It's an iterative process, but we do have, along this outline, some suggestions for where to start. So I'm going to walk through those, and the questions give more detail that are on your tables. I also want to point out that the questions are really a conversation starter that you can take back to your campuses and work through, that they are meant to facilitate conversation. So the first set of questions is around planning and thinking about what are your goals. Do you want to implement meta majors? And if so, why? I think institutions approach that from different perspectives. Lorraine County Community College they were looking at the huge number of undecided students that they had in their institution and the outcomes for those undecided students. So that was really one of their main goals, was to help students get on a path and decide earlier what they wanted to pursue. At St. Petersburg College in Florida, they saw that many students were completing with a huge excess number of credits. So they were really interested in not only student success, but the efficiency to help students get through and save time and money. So those are some of the questions in that planning section. What are the goals for meta majors? What will it cost? Who should be involved? Who should be engaged in the process? As well as, I think again, it was Terry who was talking about what assets do you already have at your institution that you can build on in the design of meta majors, whether it's figuring out how to align your orientation or your advising, what do you already have, including at your student success courses, that you can build in there. The next set of questions is about the review of programs. This focuses on the process of going through programs and really looking at what are those big chunk areas that if you were to look across your whole series of programs, what are some big chunk areas that might, where you see overlapping courses and that might help direct students down a bigger path. And actually on the next slide, this is an example of what those big chunk categories are at both Lorraine County Community College in Ohio. And on the right-hand side is in the Florida college system, those are the meta majors that all colleges need to implement as of 2013. So the two phases of planning and review of programs, the colleges that we worked with in documenting this, that's really where they are. It's a work in progress. They're kind of still in the early phases of that work, so that's where we have talked with them the most about. But definitely the next couple of phases that I want to talk through are very equally important. So the next one is around student intake. And the questions that we have in this decision process are around how do you place students into meta majors? How do you communicate with them, both prospective students and students who are incoming? Also, how do you help them make informed choices? And what are the structures in place to help them do that, whether it's orientation, advising, or career counseling? The next set of questions are around kickoff. So what happens after the student decides on a meta major? Once they choose, what experiences are going to be aligned with that meta major? And again, thinking about orientation, how can we align the orientation process, as well as advising and career counseling, and thinking about how the college will track student progress through the pathway, and also thinking about what happens when a student comes off of that pathway. What is the response? And Chris will be talking more about advising this afternoon, so we can hear more about that. And the last section provides a set of questions around progress and this idea of how do we assess if this infrastructure of meta majors is actually improving student persistence and retention. Some of the questions there are around aligning your meta major, your big broad meta major with the smaller program of study. What happens in that transition? What does that look like? And at what point do students transition from the meta major to the major? So I know I flew through that really fast, but as much as we still need more information, there's definitely a set of design principles that have emerged. We can send you these slides as well. So
Yeah, I'll share them on the website, so you can get them on board.
yeah. So and the two colleges again are Lorain County Community College and Miami-Dade College. Miami-Dade is specifically the medical campus. And two very different stories, because like I mentioned earlier, Florida, they established already what the meta majors are. So they started right with the process of implementing that in program mapping. Can I go to the next slide? Okay. Yes.
About Animator, do you have any software supporting this method? I mean,
In terms of how to,
for individual students, like, how are we going to track and follow up, let's say after 1 year, 2 years, when they go through the whole entire process, starting from, when we go from planning to review of program, student intake, then all the way through.
Yeah.
5, like, is there any software that support this program?
so
That's
there's,
my question.
yeah, thank you. So this process that I described is the process for an institution to go through as they're designing and implementing. We don't have software around that process, but right now we just have the set of questions associated with each. It looks like Chris wants to jump in, but I
Yeah,
would
I
say
can
that.
say real quick, and she can highlight, Lorraine uses PeopleSoft as their ERP, and so I can't recall the specific software they have. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about Lincoln Partners, which is a group that's done sort of a mapping of what some of the technology solutions are in the field. I'm not going to go into individual ones, but I'll spend a little bit of time.
For me, I didn't. So for us to be able to implement it in our institution, are we going to go into a guideline? How are we going to implement? And is it going to be per program or per student, per cohort,
Yeah, I think that is largely based on the context of the institution. I know Lorain County has some career software that they use, and the program map that each student gets, that they start with in conversation with their advisor, is embedded in that career planning software. And they also use the career inventory that I think Sabrina mentioned earlier. And all of that is kind of together in their career services software. But I forget what it's, I think it's called MyCap, but I think it depends on the institution. And I think that being able to embed it into the existing software, it was what they were trying to achieve instead of, I don't think there's one software out there for everybody.
Yeah, as Andrea transitioned into talking about Moraine, they tackled this institution-wide. It wasn't a subset of institutions. And I think, I'll reiterate, we'll talk more about advising in software and technology this afternoon.
So I want to talk about Lorraine County as an example, and kind of walk through the process that they have taken so far. This process started in the fall of 2014, and it's very much still ongoing. They've made progress, but they describe it as a work in progress. So all of the work that Lorraine County is doing, both around guided pathways and meta majors as a part of that, fits with their mission around driving student completion for academic and career success. And one of the key tenets there is around reducing time and cost to completion. As far as how they started the planning phase, their transfer and applied team, which is a subset of their college's larger core completion team, was charged with investigating structured pathways and meta majors. And investigating is the key word that Stephanie Sutton, who's Associate Provost and Director of Enrollment Services there, always emphasizes, because she really wanted to bring the research, the national research, to this team and have them think about it and decide whether or not this is something that they were interested in. And they overwhelmingly decided that they wanted to pursue guided pathways and meta majors. So let's see. The process that they took throughout the academic year of 2014-2015, that team met once a month, and they were the working meetings that were described earlier, as well as bringing in national experts. They worked with Davis Jenkins from CCRC. And they started out by chunking out the big program areas where they were seeing common courses, and they went from 130 majors. They were able to narrow that down, first to 20, and then now to 9. And students are able to, from the time that they are working on the application, to pick one of those 9 streams. If you already know what major you want, you can also pick that major. But if you're undecided, I'll show the application screenshot later. You select that you're interested in looking at the what they're calling program and career pathways, and then they have a description of each of those. And they've totally redesigned their website as well to correspond to these meta majors. So when you go in, as a student or anyone else, you can see what these big program and career pathways are, and then drill down into each one and see the programs associated with that. There's also a lot of information about careers in each of those categories. Part of their process was to do some analysis of the local labor market to see what jobs were most in demand in their region, and then try to map their meta majors to fit with what jobs would be in demand. So the process of actually reviewing programs and creating default program maps was pretty much a year-long process that was very faculty-driven. The co-chairs of that committee, that team that I was talking about, the transfer and applied team, they took this giant Excel sheet of 130 programs from the provost and started to, I'm not an Excel person, but using pivot tables to see what courses were in common across different disciplines. So, you know, what collection of courses all start with this English class or with this accounting class. And what they got from that process was a set of about 5, 6, 7 core, like beginning courses that they then wanted to check with the program coordinators in each of those programs. So they went to every single program coordinator across the college, the co-chairs of this team, and they wanted to show them something to have them to react to it. So they kind of did the behind the scenes work first, and then had the program coordinators look at, are these really the starting courses that you agree with, and take a look at this. And let me go to the next slide. In doing that, they were using a set of design principles. So these include that for the first semester, for all students, the goal is for the student to take College Composition 1, math and College 101, so in their first semester. The other design principle you can see is that common meta majors courses, those 5, 6, 7, however many courses that kind of provide the foundation for each of the programs in that larger disciplinary area, should ideally happen over the first 2 semesters. The last design principle is around making sure that each semester has a course in the student's program area, so from their major. And I think that's really key because that's really the hook for students. That's why they come to our colleges, is to start working towards the areas that they're interested in addition to the gen eds that are similar to what they've done in high school. And there's research that shows that earlier students can start in those content-related courses, program courses, that increases their motivation because they're more invested in it. It also increases their persistence. So this is an example from the business meta major at Lorraine. On the left side of your screen are listed 7 courses that an incoming student in their first semester can choose from those 7 courses. So you can see there's a mix of general education, student success, and then some program-related courses. And if they take from among those 7 courses, those all feed into the 12 business programs that the college has, which is on the right-hand side. This slide illustrates that if a student takes accounting in their first semester and their second semester, and then they decide, I don't like accounting, they still have 10 out of those 12 paths that they're still on track for. And obviously Lorain County could describe this a lot better, but this was a process that they went through because they were worried, as many people are, what happens if the student changes their mind. But they went through and mapped so that you can see there are still choices within each of those big buckets if you take certain of those core classes and change your mind based on what the prerequisites are. I know it depends very much by program, but they were pleasantly surprised in that mapping process to see that within the big meta major, students can have some flexibility, that it's really a suggested default, but that students can move around a little bit. And we know that that's very much tied to advising and making sure that they have a really clear understanding of what those options are. This is the application screenshot that I was talking about earlier, that students from applying are choosing whether they know already their specific major or which program and career pathway they want to choose. They also have clear language in their catalog about the meta majors, and a key point that I want to highlight here is that students in those meta majors are required to meet with an advisor every semester before they choose their courses. So every semester that they're in that meta major, they're meeting with an advisor. And at Lorraine, the way that they've designed the meta major is that once a student reaches 24 college level credits, then they would be required to select a specific major. This table is about financial aid, which is what we often get questions about. I will attempt to describe this. Basically, what Lorraine has done, this table in PeopleSoft, they have given a unique plan code for each of their meta majors so that they can track student progress in those meta majors. But because undecided students can be coded as general studies, that is the code that they're using, the SIP code, which is how students are eligible for financial aid. Basically, they're using a program code, one general program code for all meta majors, and then a unique plan code to help track progress. And then the SIP code is the same for a general studies student. And this is something that they've worked and been approved. So I know we tend to get a lot of technical questions about that I'm not able to totally go into detail about, but I know that this has worked for them. So I'd be curious to know also what people are doing already with their undecided students around financial aid. This is basically how they've mapped the process. Yes. A zip code. Oh, sorry. The plan code? Yeah. So I don't know enough about financial aid to know if that's unique to each institution, what the plan code is for each program. But my assumption is that that's a unique thing. You would like to ask another question? Yeah, I mean, this is really just for the purpose of coding. Yeah, for financial aid is the general studies code, and then the plan code that they've given is corresponding to that meta major. Sure, you're welcome. And this is just a little more detail on the advising process. All students at Lorraine have mandatory advising. As I mentioned, that they are meeting with an advisor every semester, and there's actually a registration put on each student in the meta major pathway. They can't register for their next courses until they've met with an advisor. Are there any questions? I hear a lot of interest or discussion in the crowd. Okay. I'm going to do a time check. I'm almost out of time here. So really quickly, these are just some of the other elements that they have been aligning to their meta majors, including the career services program that I was talking about earlier, so that students can see what their default program map is from the beginning. This is just to give you an example of what a program map looks like at Lorraine. So up top, this is their business and entrepreneur default map. And it starts with those 5 courses up top that a student could take in their first semester. And the way that it's structured is if you don't know which way to go, look at the end and where you're headed, and then you can start to go down the path that's interesting to you. And again, these are defaults. These are not meant to be prescriptive. They're meant to be suggestions. So students meeting with their advisors and talking through what the different options are, that's an important part of this process. This is another one that's probably hard to read, but this is a program map for engineering and manufacturing. Similarly, looking at what are your end goals, and then working backwards, what is the best set of courses for me to start with as a student. And all of the colleges that we've spoken to about this have said that their students are craving this guidance, that they often don't have time or enough information to really read through all of the course descriptions, and that they appreciate having some guidance and being able to talk through what their unique experience on a default map might look like. This next program map is different in comparison to the Lorain County one, which is semester-based program maps. The next example from St. Petersburg College is not semester-based. It's just a sequence of courses that their faculty went through a similar process of working through what's the suggested sequence for each program, and they mapped it out in order, showing that a student can come in and out at different points. So this is meant to kind of address part-time, full-time, that you can enter at different points. And within those program maps, there are suggested electives that the faculty have come to agreement on. What's the best elective, 2 or 3 electives, and when you click on it, you can see the other options. So again, it's not meant to be prescriptive. This is the path that you have to take, but this is the suggested path. And then when you click on the electives, you can see what those other recommended electives are. And to come up with those recommendations, the colleges have described the difficult conversations that they've had with faculty getting together and really trying to figure out and looking at data. What courses are students most successful? What electives correlate with the success of students through this program? And really trying to make decisions and sometimes compromises courses they're offering when, or maybe how often, and really working through that together, which is going to look very different at each institution. I know that there, Christine mentioned that there's another example of program maps from Mott Community College in Michigan. And they started with program maps as opposed to meta majors. Lorain County started with meta majors and went to program maps. There's no right sequence. You kind of need to do both iteratively, like starting with one and moving into each other and have that feedback loop. So I know that there is a webinar that I'm going to plug for Christine from Mott Community College talking through the process that they have taken as another example for you. So I'm going to pause there because we're at the end of our presentation. Does anyone have any other questions that I can answer for you? Yes?
How do you manage students entering the metadata if they're not college level?
So that's, the question was around how does the college address students who are not college ready with meta majors? That's an area that is less explored, definitely. I asked that question of my partners at Lorain, and they said that DevEd students, on their application, they indicate, just like other students, which meta major they're most interested in, and then with their advisor, they map out what remedial courses they need to do before they get on that path. They've done a lot of redesign recently around their developmental education courses to compress those sequences, so with the goal of getting students by their second semester into college ready, which obviously depends on how many levels behind. But this is a very good question that has not really been answered yet, but I think their response is that they're working with each DevEd student, still looking at that map and mapping further back.
Oh wow, that's super loud, I'm sorry. One of the things that I would add to what Andrea said, so there's two aspects. One, we need to be careful when we're having this conversation that we're treating all DevEd students as equal, right? And so there's substantial evidence that co-requisite models for students that are close will help them move very quickly. So building into your design of your program studies, co-requisite models where appropriate. It doesn't work for everybody, we know that. But we do know it works for some. The other, and this is the powerful thing about meta majors conversations, what's the right math? If you're starting with the math being algebra for everybody, well, we know that's a problem. There's lots of evidence that says it's a problem. And so by going to the meta majors, I mean, there's a lot more to it than this. I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's a conversation about which math do you need to be in which bucket. So if you're way far away from being ready for college algebra, you might be all right in a quantitative reasoning course. So I think we have to be careful to lump all the students that are not college ready in one bucket in this conversation.
Thanks, and I would add too, on the flip side of that, going towards transfer degrees, Lorain County also continues their map to show where they go after Lorain. If you're interested in transferring to the institutions that they partner with, they map out what that looks like all the way through to the transfer degree, so students can see where they're making progress and see their progress along that pathway.
Hi. I see that both of these schools have a student success course incorporated. Have you seen them the success course is broken out by meta major, so the students are in a success course that's focusing on that meta major that they're in?
I haven't seen that, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen that model. I have seen advising teams specifically around meta majors. At Lorain, they have 9 meta majors, and they have 5 of those meta majors because of the popularity of those different meta majors. They have teams of a mix of advisors, coaches, and different student services professionals around meta majors, but I haven't seen student success courses. I don't know if you...
But we are going to be having a student success course summit coming up soon, so stay tuned. Probably maybe even in January. So I'll be letting you know when that is. But these are the kinds of dialogues we'll definitely be having at that summit.
Yeah, and I think it's an opportunity to think about how to do that, how to incorporate and align the meta majors with student success courses courses and orientation, all these different experiences that the students have. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. And again, there's more information in the JFF publication I referenced, so I want to turn it over to Christine so you can grapple some of these questions at your tables. Thanks.
Please join me.